What's up, guys? Lucas here, and today I'm going to be talking about the 2020-2021 NBA offseason. So today I'm going to be talking about the Philadelphia 76ers offseason, and yeah, the roster should be up now. Just a little background. The Sixers had a very disappointing season last year. They were projected to be probably the second best team or the best team in the East to compete with the Bucks. They signed Al Horford and Tobias Harris to max contracts. They traded for Josh Richardson. They were looked at as the top team in the East, and it didn't go that way. The signings, Al Horford and Tobias Harris, didn't fit well at all. Tobias Harris was already there, and that everybody knew was a bad signing. He was put on a max contract immediately, and it just felt weird. It felt like Jimmy Butler was the one they should have kept. They let him walk, and they got a sign and trade. They were able to get Josh Richardson out of it, but still, if there was any of those two players between Harris and Butler to keep, it felt like it should have been Butler, but whatever. Then they also used that money to sign Al Horford, which at the time I thought was a cool signing, and most people did too. They saw it as Embiid insurance, and just he could play next to them, but he aged a little bit more, got a little slower. I still think he could be a good center, but was not a good fit with this team at all whatsoever. There was no shooting on this team. There was no shot creation on this team. This team just did not fit well in any way, shape, or form. So looking at their offseason this year, they added a new GM to their team, Daryl Morey, in my opinion, one of the best NBA GMs right now, and he proved why he is one of the best GMs right now this offseason. They also added new head coach Doc Rivers, which I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. I think player morale will be up because I think Doc is good at that kind of thing, but he's not a huge X's and O's guy. So looking at the moves they made this offseason, the first one, they traded for Seth Curry. This was a straight-up trade on draft night. They traded Josh Richardson for him, and I think this is a good trade for them. I will say that in a vacuum, this isn't a good trade because Josh Richardson is probably the better basketball player, and you're just trading him straight up for Seth Curry. But Daryl Morey saw what this team needed and saw shooting was the main concern that they didn't have and what they needed around their two stars. So getting a guy like Seth Curry, who's a really good shooter, can ball handle, much worse defender than Josh Richardson, but still what he brings you offensively with his shooting and dribbling, and he'll just be able to play next to Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid really well. They also traded Danny Green from the Oklahoma City Thunder, who traded for him in the Dennis Schroeder trade. This was also a really good trade. Danny Green wasn't great in the playoffs last year, but he's once again just a type of guy they need, a shooter, and replacing him with Al Horford's contract, they dropped $11 million off their salary cap, so saved money and got a more impact player. So once again, a really good trade for them. They drafted Tyrese Maxi, 21st overall from Kentucky. I've heard mixed things about him. I think he has a lot of upside. I haven't watched him that much specifically, but the player that they're talking about, like I've heard a lot of comparisons to Jamal Murray, which Jamal Murray took a little longer to get acclimated to NBA like speed and just the league in general than Cal Perry thought, because Cal Perry said he'd be the leading scorer when he was drafted, or rookie scorer when he was drafted. So maybe Tyrese Maxi will take a few years, but I've heard good things about him. So some free agents they signed Dwight Howard from the Los Angeles Lakers, who I guess will play their backup center minutes. Not a huge signing. Good energy guy. I guess if he's really going to be the Dwight he was last year, not the Dwight we saw every year before that, he'll be a decent player for them. So yeah, leaving them, obviously Al Horford, I think this was a big thing. Al Horford was not a good fit with this team at all, and he was just making way too much money. It really was a catastrophe what they were paying him to give $30 million to a player who is 35, I think, or 36, and just didn't fit your team in the slightest bit. It was just terrible because you either put him on the bench and he didn't get a lot of minutes, but you're paying him that much money to sit on the bench, or you play him and you put him next to Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, so you have three bigs who can't really shoot. He can shoot okay, but he's not like a knockdown shooter, and defenses didn't have to really respect anybody's shot, so he's going to be covered from three. So yeah, getting rid of Al Horford was a great decision by Daryl Morey, a great move by them, able to get some salary cap off their table and also get a better player who fit better with that team. So then they also traded for Josh Richardson, Josh Richardson was a really good player. I do like him, and it's kind of funny how perceptions of players change. Like a year ago, Josh Richardson was looked at as the kind of guy every team would trade for because he could shoot, play defense, dribble a little bit. Just like he's good at. There's not a lot of things he's not bad at or not good at on the basketball court. He's like kind of a Nicholas Batum type player, just when Nicholas Batum was in his prime, just like a good at everything, good glue guy. But yeah, he didn't have a good season with them. He was asked to be their best shooter, which he's not. He's not a great shooter, but next to, I'm not going to talk about him in the Mavericks. So so I think it was a tough trade to make, but you had to do it based on what this team is composed of right now and like the salary cap hell you got yourself into last season. So let's look at some other players on this team. Tobias Harris was signed to a max contract last year. He's a tough player to give that much money to. He's a skilled player, a little bit like Josh Richardson in the sense where there's not a lot he's bad at or good at on the floor. He was a 40% three-point shooter in LA, but as he came to, and even the year they lost to the Raptors, he was a really good three-point shooter, but as he's being asked to be their primary shooter, his three-point percentage went down, and he's just not a elite shooter, and that was shown last season. So I think Tobias Harris still can be a good player on this team. He's kind of similar to the Gordon Hayward situation last year in the Celtics, where it's like you're paying this money, and he's still a really good wing guy. Like there's not many guys who can do what he does at his height, and like just having a wing that can dribble, shoot, play some defense, it's going to be useful. So I still like Tobias Harris. It's just an overpay. You also have Shake Milton on this team, who started for them in the playoffs, and he was good. He isn't that much of a ball handler as a point guard, and he's an older player or an older rookie, so there might not be a huge development. Like he pretty much is what he is, but he's a really good shooter. Could be used on this team really well. Maybe not as a starter. I don't think that's his role, but I think as a off-ball two guard, or even, I guess I could see him starting just because they need the shooting, but I think Seth Curry will probably end up starting over him, but I do like him off the bench. And yeah, his off-ball shooting is really nice. It doesn't look like there's too much else on this team. Let's just get to the stars. So we got the two stars on this team. Matisse Thybulle, a really good defensive player, inconsistent shooter. If he could get his shot more consistent, then I think he could definitely be a starter for them, and I think he's still going to play a lot of minutes for them just because he's so good defensively. But yeah, his shooting definitely hurts, and it's hard to play him because of that. Their stars on this team, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Let's start with Ben Simmons. He is a 6'10" point guard who can do everything on the floor except for shoot. He's elite at everything except shooting. I think the upside with him is higher than Embiid. So with the discussion of who would you trade, I would trade Embiid before Ben Simmons, but I wouldn't trade any of them if I had the option. I think they can easily fit together. It's just the team you put around them. But yeah, Simmons is a really good player, really good passer. Just really smart with the basketball and open court. He's really good, great in transition, great at getting to the basket. Probably needs to improve just shooting in general, like free throw making. I think he could at least attempt 2 or 3 threes a game. I don't think that's ridiculous, but it seems like he doesn't really want to, so I'll believe it when I see it with him. I've heard a lot of things, but it happens every offseason that he's shooting threes in training camp. Once again, when I see it, I'll believe it, but as of right now, I don't really think he's going to be shooting threes, but if he does, hey, that'd be good for him. Joel Embiid, he is the face of the process. His stats were good last year in the playoffs, but you could just tell he wasn't invested in some games. Like there were times when he just didn't get back on defense, that he just looked defeated on the court, and he just looks exhausted by the time the second half rolls around. So with him, it's a lot of his own, like he himself is holding himself back. Like I think without a doubt, as much as I love Simmons, if both these players are in their peak form, I think Embiid is the better player, just because Embiid, if he's at his peak form, is a similar player to Shaq in a way, like just a hard player to stop offensively. He's a good shooter. And people say like he's not a great shooter. For his size, he's a good shooter. The amount he shoots too, like he takes a lot of like 20-footers and even threes. And yeah, his inside game is incredibly hard to guard, especially now with how little centers there are that could actually like defend him on the post. So yeah, if he could be in peak physical shape and not it's not even injury concerns anymore, really. He's been healthy for a few years. It really is just him staying in shape. How invested is he in the game? Like, does he sail in and out? Like his interest and his, I guess, attention. I don't know the word. Like he has these lapses where it seems like he's not involved offensively or defensively. He just kind of is drifting from both sides of the court. So I see this team making. Obviously, they're going to make the playoffs. They're too talented not to. I really just want to see Embiid finally take that step as a star and like perfect his body. Like come to start the season off in shape, play his best basketball. Because if that happens and they have shooting around him and Simmons is able to be Simmons, because I'm not really concerned. Simmons is going to give you that 17, 10, and 10 every year. He's not really a question mark. It's mostly Joel Embiid. Is Joel Embiid going to be the MVP caliber player he can be? So yeah, that's where I fall. If I'd make a guess, I'd say upper echelon of the East, like the top 4 seeds, but not the championship team, just because I don't think Embiid is ready for that yet. Yeah, so I see them similar to the Celtics yesterday, just a top team in the East. So yeah, that's what I think the 76ers are going to be next year. Tell me what you think they're going to be, if they're going to be better than I expect, worse than I expect, and what Joel Embiid is going to be like this year. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.